Viral don't proc that often, so we must see how it works. And wait, what? 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 Wait, did they change? Wait, did they just change the puncture proc already? What?
Yep, as you can see, puncture proc have been reworked. Well, this update did give us a lot of rewards and something a lot has changed, and seems that puncture proc is one that have been changed, but they never told us about, so of course I do not know about this until right now. But the question is that how does this new puncture proc be right now? So without further ado, let's hop right into it. To answer this question, we need to understand that puncture is belong to one of the physical elements we all know, which is come from the IPS, which stands for impact, puncture, and slash. As you know that slash usually the best among all three, as slash deal bleed damage, which dealing true damage that can bypass armor. While Impact Proc doesn't really use that much, but it still has its own uses thanks to the internal bleeding, hemorrhage, and shattering impact mods that can make Impact to get ourselves slash proc. But it's not just only that, Impact still got a slight uses where you can still let the enemies get an early mercy kill, but only work on heavy units and Eximus. However, Puncture doesn't really got a lot of spotlights here. We only know that Puncture proc usually good at dealing damage, but bad at procking. The good at damage is that it can deal good damage against armor. Problem is that both corrosive and radiation can deal great damage against ferrite armor and alloy armor respectively. As for the Puncture proc, well, reducing 9% of the damage is good enough, but the question is that if you want to get one shot or get high damage on your Warframe health, then this effect usually won't be that useful. The main example is that when you want to achieve shield gating, then if enemies suffer from the puncture proc, they will deal less damage, and the less damage they can deal, it's not easy for them to one-shot your shield. In that case, it will be harder to achieve shield gating. Not to mention that if you're really going into the level cap mission, then those would just completely useless already. I think because of this, they want to revert the puncture proc now. Now for the new puncture proc, instead of 10 stacks, they can only stack at 5 stacks, which somehow in most scenarios we may consider this as a nerf because we might need to use the puncture proc for the purpose of condition overload damage, and we need as much proc as we want. So 5 procs compared to 10 procs absolutely not a good idea. But in exchange that, not just only the 90% less damage can dealt from the enemy still retained there. The most important part is that we gain a new buff from the puncture proc where for each puncture proc the enemies have, your weapon can deal extra 5% critical chance damage. In other words, the maximum 5 stacks will grant you 25% flat crit chance on the enemies. Yep, it is flat crit chance. I guess it is only work on weapon because that's how I know from the wiki, and I'm not sure how the other works. This is absolutely a good bug because getting a flat crit chance is absolutely means that your weapon can easily get a red crit, right? Especially for those weapons that usually have naturally low critical chance, such as the Kuva Nuka for example, had great critical damage but low crit chance. Using this will be a good idea. Especially you don't really need to like using a lot of condition, so more of the general condition you can use it. Especially puncture is mostly have for all weapons because it's a physical element, so I guess it is good, right? Well, let's just say that it's not entirely that well from what I had tried, mainly because despite it gave us flat crit chance, which is a good idea, but 25% is just extremely too low. And not to mention that this also means that your weapon must make sure that you can go with a puncture proc status. But not many conditions you will need to use puncture proc. Not to mention that viral, corrosive, medallic, all the other elements that can increase damage towards either health or shield or even try to reduce armor, all those can provide much greater damage compared to just puncture that provide extra critical chance. So this is how I think about the current puncture proc right now. To be honest, these kind of changes really try to help out puncture proc a little bit. Well, I guess if you try to go with a normal condition, it's viable, but with a lot of condition and a lot of resources we have right now, it just somehow cannot catch up to the high requirements. Especially that when you know how to play games like using the primer, you try to strip off the armors, all of these can make it much easier. So the extra puncture proc providing the flat crit chance just somehow good, but just too minor. I mean, if you want to use flat crit chance, why not just use Arcane Avenger, which is somehow much better and much easy to get. Not to mention that the value is just much higher. But if you are in the very beginning, I guess the puncture proc really help out a little bit. If this is your first time watching, why not leave a like and subscribe to my channel so that you won't miss out any newest contents from me. Why not leave your comments down below if you got any ideas or thoughts you want to share with all of us. And that's it from me, and as always, I will see you all next time. Bye bye!